What's happening, Disco Ball Nation? Let's talk about this Week 7 matchup between the Seattle Seahawks and the Atlanta Falcons, which actually has one of the highest total points totals on the entire week. The Seahawks are coming in as 3-point dogs. The over/under is 51. Let's talk about the game. And as we talk about the game, let's talk about the QB matchup. Once again, everything we do here is sponsored by Drafters Fantasy. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the quarterback matchup. Currently, the Atlanta Falcons defense, on average, allows 1.33 passing touchdowns per game to opposing quarterbacks, tied for 17th with none other than the Seattle Seahawks. They also allow 31.67 pass attempts per game. That's 17th most advantageous, not very advantageous at all. They allow 23.17 pass completions. That's the 7th most advantageous matchup. And they allow 193 pass yards per game. So if we're looking here at Geno Smith's props here on Drafters Fantasy, I figured I'd just share the screen. It looks a lot better this way. His props is currently at 261.5 pass yards. That's way over what Atlanta allows on average. Now, obviously, he has a three-headed monster at wide receiver, but with that being said, I'm not touching that prop. The pass completions, Vegas did a good job with it. It's at 24.5. I really don't like it. I'm not touching it. Rushing yards, 11.5. Also not interested. Pass plus rush, not interested. I'm interested in the 0.5 interceptions. I'll tell you that much. All right, let's talk about what the Seattle Seahawks allow on average to opposing quarterbacks. Once again, like we alluded to earlier, they allow, they're tied 17th with the most passing touchdowns per game at 1.33 pass touchdowns. 21st for pass attempts at 30.17 pass attempts. 23rd for pass completions at 20 pass completions per game, and 22nd for pass yards at 212.83 pass yards. Now, I will say these stats are definitely skewed. If we look at the Seattle Seahawks, they've had three really, really easy matchups. If the Patriots are in your schedule and the Broncos are in your schedule, there's not going to be a lot of passing volume and production. We saw what happened last week against a above average passing team, and Brock Purdy and the 49ers passed all over them. And I think Kirk Cousins will do the same. But nevertheless, let's look at his props currently. 264.5 passing yards. Don't like that. Still not taking it. 24.5 pass completions. I'd consider it for sure. Pass plus rush. Also not touching it. Interceptions. Not interested whatsoever. I do think Kirk Cousins is a start. I think Geno Smith may have to be a start because this game is going to be an absolute shootout. The numbers and how the game is going to play out, I don't think are really going to add up. But let's talk about the running back battle. We got Kenneth Walker against Bijan Robinson. So we got Bijan Robinson up here first. So let's go through it. The Seahawks defense allows on average to opposing running backs 0.83 rush touchdowns. That's 10th most advantageous matchup on the week. I like Bijan Robinson for anytime touchdown. They allow 124.5 rushing yards. That's the third most advantageous. And if you guys see here, his rushing yards prop is at 62.5. I think that's going to go up. So if you guys are going to tail now, use promo code DISCO to double your initial deposit dollar for dollar up to $100 Rooskies. Let's go. And then for receptions, the Seahawks defense allows 4.33 receptions per game. That's the 15th most advantageous matchup on the week. And there's no reception prop currently for Bijan. Receiving yards, they allow 31 receiving yards to opposing running backs. That's 19th most advantageous matchup. Currently, his prop is at 23.5 receiving yards. Oh, here is the receptions prop. Sweet, let's go. 3.5 receptions. I kind of like it. Longest reception. I think it's decent. I'm not necessarily touching it. The only prop I'm really interested in so far is Geno Smith interception, Bijan Robinson rushing yards. Let's look at Kenneth Walker and what the Falcons defense allows on average. They allow 0.17 rush touchdowns. That's the least advantageous matchup for running backs this week when it comes to rushing touchdowns. They allow 97.5 rush yards. That is the 16th most advantageous, as you can see here. Kenneth Walker's rushing yards prop is at 67.5. I'm not touching it. I really don't like it. I don't like it at all. Here's where it does become advantageous, and maybe we'll sprinkle in a little bit of Charbonnet. I'm still not touching it. 5.17 receptions per game is what the Seahawks defense allows on average to opposing running back. That's the eighth most advantageous matchup. And we're talking about receiving yards to opposing running backs. They allow 23.17, which is 29th, not very advantageous at all. You see Vegas did a very, very good job here at 23.5, 3.5 receptions, 11.5 longest reception. I'm not touching any of his props. I really don't like it. We got Tyler Allgeier's props here, DK Metcalf's props. So let's pull up the wide receiver slide here. All right, so since we got DK Metcalf up already, the Falcons defense allow, on average, to opposing wide receivers 13.67 receptions. That is the 15th most advantageous. They allow the 22nd most advantageous, so not very advantageous to opposing wide receivers, 135 receiving yards and 1.33 receiving TDs. I know I said red TDs here, but it is what it is. I'm not perfect, and I'm not going back to edit it right now. That's the 9th most advantageous matchup. If we're looking at DK Metcalf, his receiving yards should be in line, but there are two other wide receivers there with DK Metcalf and with Jackson Smith and Jigba that they could eat into it. I would consider his longest reception. I think that's totally doable. Let's look at what the Seahawks defense allows on average to opposing wide receivers. They allow 10.17 receptions to opposing wide receivers, but once again, the numbers are skewed because they went against really, really, really terrible defenses. Nevertheless, that's 26th, not very advantageous, but the numbers are skewed. We saw what good offenses, I mean, even what Darius Slayton and the New York Giants did against the secondary, and I think this is a much better receiving core than the Giants, and I think it's in line as a very fair receiving core. If we're talking about against the 49ers, it's very comparable. 124.5 receiving yards, 27th, one receiving touchdown, 16th. Longest reception is definitely in play for Darnell Mooney. And Drake London here, you can see he's at 72.5 receiving yards, 6.5 receptions, 22.5 longest reception. I do like the longest reception for Drake London a heck of a lot. I do think the receiving yards is totally doable. But 6.5 receptions. I'm not really interested. I'm not really touching that at all. Jackson Smith and Jigba, not really interested. Ray McLeod, 17.5 longest receptions, rather inflated. Tyler Lockett, not interested at all. Let's talk about Kyle Pitts and the tight ends. Switch the slides over here. All right, Seahawks defense is really, really bad against the tight ends, and we saw George Kittle absolutely go bonkers, and I think Kyle Pitts is going to find himself in the end zone. The Seahawks defense allows the 9th most receptions to opposing tight ends at 5.5, the 4th most receiving yards at 57.33, and the 8th most receiving touchdowns at 0.33 receiving touchdowns. If you look here, his longest reception prop is very enticing at 18.5. His receiving yards is also enticing. I would be inclined to take his longest reception because he seems to smash this pretty much every single week. So I do like that. Let's look at what the Falcons defense allow on average to opposing tight ends. And we'll talk about Noah Fant here. It's not very advantageous. They are the worst matchup when it comes to receiving touchdowns. So he's definitely sittable and definitely touchdown dependent. They allow 4.33 receptions to opposing tight ends, 41.17 receiving yards. Currently, his receiving yards is at 24.5. I would definitely consider his longest receptions at 13.5. I would also definitely consider that as well. With that being said, guys, that's our breakdown and rundown on this Week 7 matchup between the Seahawks and the Falcons. Turn the bell notification on, like the freaking video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's rock it. Let's talk about the next game. See you guys in like 25, 30 minutes. Peace.